The One Piece card game is about to pop off, and here's why. What is up? I'm real_Joshua, and today I just wanted to talk a little bit about the progress of the One Piece card game and why it's uniquely positioned in the trading card game market. First off, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. But I want to talk about 5 reasons why I think One Piece is about to blow up and why now is the best time to get into this card game. First, the game is way more affordable. I had a comment recently that said, I've really wanted to get into the One Piece card game, but I just can't do it because the scalpers are just way too much. This was a huge issue for me when I got into the game in March of this year, but I want to get out there and say that this is no longer the problem that it once was, right? When I got into this game, booster boxes were like $200. It was impossible to find One Piece in public, which is just insane to me. So the strategy at that time was just buy singles. But the problem with that is that every single was like $20 when you have a 50 card deck. Not every single, so there's a bunch of bulk cards that you can get for a few cents. But if you wanted to build an entire deck, it was going to cost like at least $200 to $250 at a baseline. There were a couple decks like Nami and Zoro that you could build for like $150, but that was like the baseline. Now that has changed. If you want to build a deck, it's around $150. And if you want to build one of the really, really cheap decks, you can build a Nami deck, I believe, which actually recently won a regional for around $60 to $80 or something like that, I want to say, maybe even cheaper. And on top of that, I feel like it's not that bad for a deck to cost $150. I don't think that's that far off base. The thing is, it should also be a fun experience to buy packs and a viable way to enjoy the game. And now that's way more realistic. You can get booster boxes for around $100. So that's like way closer to the retail baseline of how this stuff should be. That being said, I think that the game is cheaper than it's ever been, and that makes it by default a really good time to get into One Piece if it's something that you've been interested in before. Second, more people are getting into One Piece in general, and it has the potential to get way more popular in the pretty near future. So I don't know if y'all know this, but the thing that originally got me into the idea of One Piece, the trading card game specifically, is that I went to Japan in January of 2023, and I don't know if y'all know this, but One Piece is insanely popular over there. Like in the street, there's traffic dividers that have chopper on them, and this is like public infrastructure stuff that we're talking about. It's just a massive phenomenon that by extension makes it a bigger franchise to make a card game out of there because it is that popular. I know it's popular here in the States, but the level that we're talking between here and Japan is like, it's a household name. It's something that everybody knows in Japan. Best selling thing ever there as far as manga are concerned. And you can just tell when you're walking in the streets that everybody knows One Piece. So that being said, I was really surprised, even though I probably shouldn't have been, that the One Piece card game was really huge. And I've been a long-time card game fan, and I was like, this game actually looks pretty fun. The card art was really nice, and I was immediately drawn in because I already was a huge One Piece fan at the time, but it made me want to play the game. And now here I am a year later making YouTube content about this game. So I think if this show was to get as popular here as it is in Japan, or if it was to become as big as some of the highest level anime here, say Demon Slayer or Attack on Titan, I know ton of people who watch these shows that are not into many other anime besides that, just because for them it's a really good entry point. They love these shows, and it's kind of like the only things they want. For some, it's the gateway into anime and manga. For them, One Piece is kind of a bridge too far because it is such a long series, which I understand, but that's what has me excited about the upcoming Wit Studio remake, The One Piece, which is going to condense the show into a much more bite-sized format, which I think, along with the updated animation, is going to give One Piece the reputation in the States that it deserves, which to me is that this is the best manga and best anime ever made. The comparison I would make is that what Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is to Full Metal Alchemist, that's what the One Piece could be for One Piece. People liked Full Metal Alchemist, but now Brotherhood is widely considered to be one of the best anime ever released. And I think condensing the show down into a much more digestible format for the West is what gave it that status. One Piece here is already big despite being one of the longest anime ever conceived. And once that gets condensed into the Brotherhood type format with the One Piece, I think it's gonna pop off. On top of that, I think we're in a really interesting position in the West, which is that when One Piece was originally premiering, right, in 1997, 1999, the people who were into anime at that time were like diehard fans, and it was still considered a really niche subculture in the wider pop culture spectrum. It wasn't like everybody was watching anime. You were a nerd if you watched anime. You were very weird if you went to anime expos. So already One Piece was at a disadvantage because it was premiering at a time when people weren't that into anime, period. And so people didn't really understand the appeal of the show when it first came out. They hadn't been following everything that had been doing over that time. Whereas in Japan, when One Piece came out, people kind of saw the potential early on of what the show could be, and it continued to capitalize that, and it sort of snowballed into this cultural phenomenon that it is. We never had that. And so for us, it's going to be really helpful to take a step back to kind of reassess those early days and to repackage it in a format that's going to be way more welcoming to modern audiences. When you have a bigger audience from the show, you get a bigger audience for the game that is about the show. Number 3, more adults are going to get into One Piece. So this isn't something that's talked about very much with One Piece, but One Piece is a shonen, which is it's directed at younger men, but the audience for this show and this manga skews really diverse. And for the most part, the audience of One Piece is older. This came out actually 8 years ago in Japan, but it was kind of a demographic run through of what the audience for One Piece is like. If you look at this, 1 through 18 aged viewers and readers only accounts for 12% of the audience of One Piece. And then for 19 to 29, that's 43%. But then on top of that, you have 30 through 49, which is what the demographic I fall under, which is 32%. 50 above is 13%. Even bigger than 1 through 18. So One Piece in Japan is like Pokemon for adults, essentially. This could owe to the show being old enough to, rent a car, but so is Pokemon. But I would say that One Piece does skew quite a bit more toward adults. I don't have any further stats on this personally, but I did go to the One Piece Symphony Orchestra in July of this year, and I gotta say, everyone there was in their 20s and 30s pretty much. And what matters about that? Why do we care? Well, people who are in those age brackets have more disposable income to spend on card games, and when One Piece inevitably becomes a household name, those people will want to find ways to express their love for the show, and they will end up buying One Piece stuff, which at least that's my view on it. That's my speculative vision of what could happen in the future. 4th, big influencers are getting into this game and spreading the word. I saw freaking Steve Aoki talking about this thing on Instagram the other day. Like, he has all these cards, like he had a cereal Luffy or like a cereal Shanks or something, and it's cool to see him collect. As a longtime famous collector of Pokemon cards, to see that he's into the One Piece card game is awesome. Moist Critical is also getting really into the game. I've seen a lot of people are interested in the game now because they've seen his channel talk about it. The word is spreading that this is a really good and really fun game, and I think that on top of the show getting more popular is going to help the game's reputation to snowball. It's probably never going to surpass Yu-Gi-Oh! It's probably never going to surpass Pokemon, but we don't have to do that, dude. We can kind of occupy our own space. It's just cool to see that this game is growing the way that it is. Number 5, we are in one of the most exciting times for the metagame. I put this one last because it's probably going to age the worst out of all of these, just because metagames evolve so quickly. But in the US, in the English format, I should say, we're in this really unique position, which is that the Japanese meta is 3 months ahead. It's a set or two ahead of our metagame because the sets release in Japan and then they come stateside months later. So in the past, that's meant that Asia in general will create this metagame, which then we get in the West, and we mostly just build off of that. That's our foundation. We're not really determining our own metagame, but recently they banned this deck called RP Law and this card called Ennius Lobby, which makes 2 of the strongest decks. Well, one of them is just completely irrelevant because you can't use it anymore, and the other is going to get quite a bit less strong, which makes it a bit more oppressive in the metagame. The thing is that these 2 decks were the kings of the Eastern format. Everything that you were able to play had to be able to beat Law, it had to be able to beat Lucci, and if it couldn't, then you just couldn't take it to a larger tournament. Since those cards are banned now, we are going to have a metagame in the West where you could basically play whatever you want. Nobody knows what the best deck is going to be. And I think that the repercussions of this are going to reverberate through the next few sets. And the reason for that is something else that I don't hear people talk about, which is Japan is going to be going into OP09, right? Since they're going into OP09 completely fresh, they're going to have to build the knowledge of the metagame for that from the ground up. Whereas we are going to be building the past of the metagame that they should have experienced. We'll get to see these two metas develop independently of one another, and Japan can actually learn from what we start cooking up in OP08 as they start creating new stuff for OP09. But I think it'll be a really neat time to be able to collaborate and learn more about the metagame with the East, which is something that we've never had access to before. It was always like they create something and we try to build upon it. Now we'll all be able to build upon this stuff together since we're all kind of figuring it out at the same time. That stuff is super, super exciting to me. And it's one of the reasons why the game aspect of this game, it's going to be really exciting in this time. All right, so that about wraps it up. Thanks so much for watching. Again, check me out on Twitch. I'm at real_Joshua if you want to see my streams. Subscribe if you haven't already. And also there's a link down below to my TCG Player affiliate link. If you do end up buying cards, if you've been playing the game for a long time, just click on that. And when you buy cards, I'll get some of the kickback on that. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Do you have any ideas about why this card game is going to get popular? Do you think that I'm right? Do you think that I'm completely wrong and that this game is almost dead? I could see an argument being made for that, although I would strongly disagree with you, obviously. Anyway, if you do like the channel, please subscribe if you haven't already. Really appreciate that. And I will see you in the next one. Later.